Hello and welcome to Geezers of Gear, episode number 244. Today's podcast is brought to you by ACT Entertainment. Unlock your potential with the ACT Academy New Professionals Bundle, exclusively designed for students and educators in North America. This comprehensive package provides not only access to the entire Grand MA beginner learning path, but also a Grand MA3 Viz Key with the power to unlock the most exciting visualization tools on the market today. Tailored to empower a new generation of professionals and the educators who train them, the New Professionals Bundle equips you with the skills and tools needed to excel in tomorrow's entertainment lighting industry. Whether you're a student aspiring for a passion-driven career or an educator striving to inspire, the ACT Academy New Professionals Bundle is a massive opportunity you won't want to overlook. Visit actentertainment.com today to learn more. This episode is also brought to you by GearSource. Founded in 2002 with an ambitious mission to support live events businesses buy and sell gear globally. Since that time, the company has transacted in more than 100 countries, selling $250 million in sound, lighting, staging, and video gear. GearSource continues to evolve the platform for massive global growth, enabling localized currencies, payments held in escrow to protect buyers and sellers, AI-powered logistics behind a new global logistics brand, and more. Throughout 2024 and beyond, the company will continue to grow its toolbox for the benefit of users worldwide. So why not take full control over your gear with a visit to gearsource.com. Episode 244, we're back, and it is that time of year again. What time is it, you ask? Great question. It is Eurovision Song Contest time, so it just happened last week, and it was the 68th edition of the Eurovision Song Contest, and it took place in Sweden, in Malmö, Sweden, and the winner is Nemo from Switzerland. So there you go. I know you were dying to hear that. And probably more appropriately or more applicably to our industry is the usual orgasm of gear involved in putting this show on. And so I'm going to go down sort of a summarized version of this list, but audio I'm not really going to go into too much. It was a bunch of Digico consoles and a ton of Velacoustic K1 and Cara systems. I think there was some outline stuff there. It was just a ton of audio equipment, and I think there were like 4 Digico consoles. Just crazy amounts of gear. Lighting, though, was nuts. So 708 active universes were utilized. 708 universes. 52 Robe Forte HCF, and I'm not sure what HCF means, but I'm sure someone's going to tell me. 14 Robe T2s, 57 Robe T1s, 169 ROX Light Cluster S2. I'm not sure what that is. I think it's some sort of a blinder. 22 Claypaky Skylos. So those are the larger laser fixtures that do the sky tracking stuff. 376 Claypaky Tambora Linear. 8 RE Sky Panel S30C. 16 Astera Hydra panels. 32 Astera Titan tubes. 32 BB&S Pipeline Reflect Bicolor, and I'm not sure what that is. That must be a British thing or something. 360 Ayrton Rivali. which I would think is probably the largest use thus far of Rivali's because it's a pretty new fixture. 138 brand new Ayrton Kyalamis, and I don't know if I said it right. I know it's quite funny, but Olaf, I watched a video of Ola from this show, Ola Melzig, talking about the Kyalami, and he calls it the salami because he can never really remember the name, I think. 43 Ayrton Huracan Wash, 2 Ayrton Euros, 2. Is that the right number? Maybe I cut a number out of that one, but it says 2 Ayrton Euros. 525 Chauvet Pixel Bar 16, 28 GLP JDC 1s. Funny they didn't use JDC 2s on this. 264 Mac 1s, Martin Mac 1s, 40 Martin Mac Aura XIPs. So that is quite a list. I think it's just over 2,000 fixtures in total. Wow, and I watched the show, or I watched parts of it. I've seen a bunch of videos of it, and lots of lights for sure. Lots and lots of lights. Did it blow me away? Maybe not, but lots and lots of lights. And it's impressive from just a scale standpoint, I guess. What else is going on? Plaza Leeds is today and tomorrow, the 14th and 15th of May, which is yesterday and today, I think. And by the time you hear this, it's a week ago, so forget about it. And of course, my favorite topic, once again, is AI. So I'm kind of excited this week because I'm a geek and I use ChatGPT almost like it's my best friend. And GPT 4.0 arrived this week. So I thought it was 40, sort of with a typo in it because it's a big 4 and a little O, but it's actually 4 and the letter O, and I forget what it stands for. Omni, I believe, is what the O stands for. But it arrived this week. I think it officially dropped either yesterday or the day before, which would be the 13th or 14th of May. And what have I noticed? I've noticed it's quicker. I've noticed that they've definitely spent some more time on the sort of human interface, the human/voice interface on it. It is meant to be used with your voice. It's meant for you to have a conversation with it. And that's on my phone anyways. That's how I've been using ChatGPT, is really just having a conversation saying, I'd really like to design something like this with this and this. What do you think? And maybe we could add this. And then, of course, really, again, it all comes down to the prompting. It comes down to how you're prompting, who you're acting ChatGPT to behave like. Do you want it to be a lawyer? Do you want it to be a doctor? Do you want it to be, a website designer? And then exactly what your expectations are for output. So, you don't want to be wishy-washy. Otherwise, it makes up some pretty wacky stuff. And I'll tell you, one of the things that continues to plague me and probably others who rely heavily on ChatGPT at this point is when you are creating specifically things in DALL-E, graphics, images, etc., and you say, I want it to have these words on it, or I want it to be a logo for this company name or whatever. Spelling errors like crazy, and you'll say correct your spelling errors, and then it'll spell something else differently and fix the words that you had before. And that is a frustration that I've found, and in researching it, it's a frustration that a lot of people have found. One of the great things that really is going to come out of this new 4.0 is a lot of new virtual assistant capabilities and tools and functionality, which I think is one of the things that at least I've always said, and I know a lot of people have always said, that the early stage of this large language model, ChatGPT kind of stuff, one of the pieces of low-hanging fruit is probably going to be this whole personal digital assistant thing where it books your flights, it does this, it does that. It does like a lot of things that a busy executive or a busy person would want help with. I'm not saying it's going to replace personal assistants, but I think it's going to augment them, or for people who don't have them, like I don't have an assistant, never really have, as busy as I've been. I've always preferred to do things on my own pretty much, and I think I'm pretty hard to keep track of sometimes. It was funny, I actually had an assistant one time at Martin. I can't remember her name. anyways, whatever her name was, nice lady, but she was so frustrated because, I was booking my own meetings, I was booking my own flights. She didn't know where I was half the time. This was, before iPhone. And so, it was a more frustrating experience for her than it was for me, I think. But I'm just one of those guys likes to do stuff on my own, but it is nice to get help. And so, yes, I'm using a lot of different AI tools. And, I look for AI tools that really help to improve my day, help me focus on sort of that 20% stuff that's really important to me and that I guess offers the biggest returns to me, while a lot of the simpler things, the more menial or repetitive tasks, I will look to tools, ChatGPT, but also many others that are very specific, very purpose created, things that do very specific things. And, I've been playing with a lot of those recently, and they're excellent. They're all excellent. I mean, the problem is, and I was actually talking with Sarah about this morning, you don't want to overcommit. So like, let's say you find something that's really great at creating presentations, which we have, and we've been using something called Gamma, which is excellent for creating presentations, but also websites. You can do a full website in a few minutes on Gamma, and it will even publish the website to the internet. But you don't want to overcommit and sign up for a year on these things, because there's 100 more coming like next week, and the bar just keeps going up and up and up and up, and they just keep getting better and better. One of the so what else? Let me go through what other news was there in AI world. Interesting talk last week with Jim from Vectorworks on some of the ways they've been incorporating AI and how they're also being cautious and mindful of the fact that they don't want to cut designers' legs out from under them or programmers' legs out from under them. And one of the ways I've used AI, and I'm sure a lot of other people, when you're on Zoom calls or any kind of video meetings, Zoom, Meet, whatever, are you using any kind of a personal assistant to come on that call with you and take notes? And I'm finding more people are, but most tech people are, like not so much in our industry, but when I have a meeting with someone in the tech world, they always do. But people in our industry, still, it's kind of a slow, they're slow to adapt to this thing where you're using a tech, like a robot basically, to come in and take notes. But I've mentioned it before, but my company is on something called Roam, which is a very cool virtual office platform. And if you're ever listening to this and you'd like me to demo it, or you'd like even the company to demo it, I have no deal. I have no kickbacks. I have no payment. They're not a sponsor. I just love the product. I pay to use it just like everybody else does. And the cool thing is there's only one price. It doesn't matter if you're IBM getting Roam from them or if you're little old Gear Source getting Roam from them. But Roam has something called Magic Minutes, which records our meetings. And it's not recording the video. It's just recording notes. And the cool thing, so it'll spit out a summary. It'll basically say, here's the high level stuff you talked about. Here are some takeaways or action items from the meeting. And, here's maybe some follow-up you need to do. Well, from there, anyone who was in that meeting will get that email and will be able to go in and ask questions and say, did we talk about this? Did we talk about this? Were there any details about the dimensions of the stage for this show or whatever? And it'll give you back all of the notes from those specific things. So even though it's showing you a very summarized view of the notes, it's got all of the notes and will package them however you want. It's pretty excellent. I use it all the time. So, that's sort of my AI section for this week. Thanks very much. Actually, Eric Loader reached out to me after the last episode, one of the recent episodes, and he heard me talking about Sam Altman, I think. And Sam Altman is the CEO of ChatGPT, OpenAI. And Sam has been on a couple of interesting podcasts recently. If you listen to podcasts, I really liked the Lex Friedman, Sam Altman podcast, very good. And also just in the past 4 or 5 days was there's a podcast called All In, which is another tech podcast. And Sam was on that, and that was also very good. It gives you a good, like, I know a lot of people out there just want to dispel this and throw it into the garbage and make it go away, this whole AI thing. It's not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. It's not going away. It's not going to disappear. You can't wish it gone. But I think listening to Sam, who's sort of really positioned right now as one of the leading guys in the AI world, listening to him talk is actually rather calming, because there are a lot of safety concerns and security concerns, and there's a lot of thought and energy going into keeping the world safe with all of these very rapidly learning AI models out there. So check out those podcasts. And as far as our podcast, if you don't mind, please remember to like and subscribe to whatever medium you watch or listen to our podcast on. Certainly it's gaining momentum on YouTube. That's still our smallest platform. We get, a couple hundred views per episode maybe, and starting to climb up because we do all the shorts and stuff, and they're getting a lot of traction. Our biggest platform today is somewhere between Spotify and Apple. Apple, of course, is audio only. Some people prefer to consume podcasts audio only still. I do about half and half now, half audio, half video. If I'm out for my walks or whatever, I do it on audio. But I will give you a hint or a pointer. If you use Spotify, you can do audio and video, and it'll basically keep your place wherever you are. So if you're listening and then you get to a place where you actually want to watch the podcast, you can just click on the video and it'll be right at the same spot you were listening at. So Spotify is, as far as a user experience or user interface, I really like it a lot for podcasts. And that's kind of where I listen to a lot of my podcasts if they're available there. Joe Rogan I listen to and watch on Spotify as well. And we host our platform or our podcast on Spotify also. So I think there's some extra benefit there as well. So please though, when you listen to it, like those episodes that you do like. Don't like the ones you hate. Fortunately for us, there's not a hate little emoji or whatever. But like the ones that you like, and please subscribe. All of that helps us. There's all these crazy, internet and Google algorithms and things. And the more likes and the more subscriptions we get, the better the podcast does. That's good for us. It's good for our listeners, and it's good especially for our sponsors. So please, I would appreciate that. And even comment. Whether it's on YouTube or on Spotify, you can put comments on the podcast itself. And those are all helpful as well. So I appreciate that very much. And we still have a couple of spots available in June. We're booked up in May. I think June is about 85-90% booked. According to Sarah, there's a couple of spots open. I think there's one near the beginning and then maybe one or two near the end. So that's just producer@geezersofgear.com. Reach out to Sarah and fill the spot. Again, the criteria is, the bar is low. Are you interesting? That's really all that matters to us, is that you're interesting and our listeners are going to like you, find you interesting. So they don't even have to like you. They could hate you and find you interesting. I think some days that's me. So today's guest, and God, I don't know how to say his last name. The first name is Claude or Cloud. I'm not sure how he pronounces that either. The last name is Viens. Claude is a product specialist for lighting at AVL Media Group, one of our sponsors in Montreal, Canada. Claude is responsible for projects and support in North America. He spearheaded AVL's continued growth in the professional lighting and visual effects marketplace. He has 30 plus years of experience spanning a wide range of disciplines, from lighting, live events, lighting design, stage lighting, lighting control, tour management, architectural lighting, LED lighting systems, and event planning. Claude's international experience as a lighting designer, programmer, and board operator in every type of production, from music to dance to film, is an incredible benefit to AVL Media Group's customers as they look to the industry-leading technology to help them wow their audiences. Claude has his own podcast called BackStage Cowboys. He started it in 2018. He has also written 2 self-published books, which I intend to talk about. So please welcome to Geezers of Gear, Claude Viens. Hello, Claude. How are you?
Hey, Marcel. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm pretty okay. What is it? Wednesday. It's Wednesday as we record this. So I'm halfway through, getting my ass kicked this week. I guess it's been a good one. Yeah.
Okay. So Wednesday is okay, and I suppose Friday is the day to be happy.
Friday for me. So I've never been one of these guys who works for the weekend. I've always loved Mondays for some crazy reason. I love work. I love what I do. And so I've always really liked Mondays. But lately I really kind of do like Fridays. I try not to book a lot of meetings on Fridays. Fridays for me are kind of like I wouldn't call it a free day, but it's a day when I get to do a lot more thinking and a lot less in and out of meetings all day.
Mm-hmm.
Typically. I mean, sometimes Fridays are just as crazy as every other day, but that's how I like to line it up anyways. And I tend to work all weekend too. So it just feels different though, it just feels different.
Well, for me, Monday used to be my day off in my touring days.
Oh,
so
yeah,
that was the
of course.
quiet day when everybody went to work and I could do whatever I wanted, no traffic, and it was all good,
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So this is kind of fun. I get to do a podcast with a podcaster. And
yeah, it's strange for me though.
Is it?
Yeah. I feel I'm on the wrong side of the mic here.
Yeah. Well, you know what? First of all, I respect the fact that you have a mic. I don't know if it's one of your pet peeves, but I certainly I love when somebody has a proper microphone and God forbid even headphones sometimes.
Yeah.
It makes such a difference. Like I love good audio quality on podcasts that I listen to. So I also like to produce one with decent quality as well. But generally it's not in your hands, as you know. Like somebody comes into a Zoom call and they're talking to a computer that's 4 feet away or something, or onto their cell phone. And it's not always the best quality, but
or the line bombs up halfway.
Yeah.
And you have to change to a different platform. I've done that once, so I have an interview that has 2 different sounds.
Oh, I have so many of those because what happens, like some of mine go 3 hours, and so their AirPods will die and then they'll be ruffling around trying to find another set of headphones or another microphone or something. And then that something goes wrong. And I've had so many of those, like literally so many of them. But
I apologize for my cracky chair, by the way. It's
all good.
Yeah, this is the chair I've had for years and years. I was gigging with it back in the days when I was working on movie sets.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I spent some money and I bought a quality chair because you could be literally sitting behind a light board for 14 hours.
Yeah.
And in those 14 hours, you could have like a stretch of 6 hours where nobody just needs anything. So you're just sitting on your chair.
What's funny is that oftentimes I will ask people, especially lighting designers or front of house engineers or whatever, I'll ask what are like 3 pieces of gear you won't leave the house without. And so many people say a comfy front of house chair.
Oh, yeah.
It just makes such a difference because you're spending so much time there.
Exactly. It's been all over, so now it's really getting cracky. But
yeah, well,
I still like
happens. The good news is I have noise cancellation on my side, so we'll get rid of it.
Super.
So do you play guitar or bass or both?
Okay.
I see them both over your right shoulder there.
For the last 5 years, I've been playing bass. But it's I've started playing music in '69.
Oh.
Yeah, funny story. I was 5 years old and my parents brought me to the living room and there was this thing in the middle of the living room. And they asked me, "Do you know what that is?" I said, "A heater." They lifted the cover and it was a chord organ.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow. That's funny.
So I started playing the organ in '69 and all the way up to the '80s.
Wow.
When I was
So
playing in a band.
it
After
sounds
that,
like you're exactly the same age I am if you were 5 in 69, because
there you go. I'm
I have a
60
big
now.
birthday coming up this year.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
mine isn't yet. Mine's in a month, actually. A month. Actually, it's less than a month now. It's a month less a week. So June
So
8th.
is that a celebration for you, or is it a downer? It's a
Big
downer.
downer.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
really?
just, you know what? Like, part of me should think it's a celebration. First of all, my dad died at 52 years old. And so I've outlived him already. So it should be a big celebration in that regard. I'm relatively healthy. I'm relatively successful. I've had a great life and all of those things. So it really should be a celebration. But God, it's 60. It just feels so old, So, yeah, I mean, 50 was rough for me too. And I don't know why, because, 40, I didn't care at all. 30, I didn't care at all. But 50, all of a sudden, I think it's because you grow up as a kid thinking 50's old.
Yeah.
And now here you are, you just turned old. And
Yeah.
then you're like, well, geez, at least I'm not 60. So you spend 10 years thinking that. And here I
Yeah.
am looking at it. So what
Oh,
about you?
it was the opposite. I
Really?
found the 30s were hard because
Huh.
that's when you're struggling to build a career, to raise a family.
True.
You're always running after money.
Yeah.
And 40s, I started getting some ease. But the thing is, started this career as a lighting, you know, LD,
Yeah.
lighting designer, lighting programmer, call it whatever you want. And I was 39.
Mm-hmm.
So, had I known probably when I was in school, I could actually earn a living doing this, I might have done it earlier.
Yeah.
But no, I've been through all sorts of stuff,
Yeah.
and at 39, I just pulled the plug and I said, "Hey, how about if I just try doing what I want to do?"
Yeah.
And that's
Good
how it
call.
started. So for me, at 40 was a revelation. It was like, oh, we can start having fun now,
Yeah.
and earn a decent living.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's cool. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
so for
good.
me, it's the opposite. I'm getting younger as I get older. I'm
Good for
actually in
you.
better shape now than when I was 20. So
I kind of am too, because I don't have a lot of the demons that I had when I was 20. I'm not living as rough or wild or whatever you want to call it as I did when I was 20. But recently I've definitely, since 50, I've definitely focused a lot more on health and longevity, and realizing that, hey, I can kind of extend my health span here to, my later years. So many people are focused on that final year. Like, is it going to be 85? For me, whatever that year is, I want to live life until like a month before it. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, I
yeah.
want to be doing what I want to be doing. Like Mick Jagger, seeing him the other day, I watched a video of him in Las Vegas, and he literally ran from like the stage all the way out to, I guess it's a B stage, or they've got a ramp going out to front of house or something. But he sprinted, like he ran like a 16-year-old, and he's 80,
Yeah,
and so living the life you want to live with health, and not like being stuck in bed or on a couch with your feet elevated or whatever it is, right?
yeah.
That to me is what I'm trying to do. So whether that number is 75 or 85 or 100, I want to live life right up to that point. I don't want the 10 years of dementia or 10 years of, whatever else it is. And I'm not knocking any of people who have that or anything. I'm just saying, if I can help it now, I want to do the things that I need to do to be
Love it.
healthier later.
Yeah, I was going to recommend you a book that I
Okay.
read a few years ago, and I actually rebought in the form of audiobook. It's called Younger Next Year.
I've done it. Yeah.
You've done it?
Yeah, yeah. Robert Roth, who is now with okay, so wait, he was Christie, now he's Four Wall. Robert Roth is with Four Wall, and he's, I think, turning 70 this year. And the guy just has energy for days. He's one of the top touring lighting executives out there. He had his own company called R.A. Roth in Atlanta for a long time, sold that company to PRG, was with PRG for a long time, then Christie for a long time, and just recently went to Four Wall. And but I don't know, 10 years ago, probably he said, Marcel, you got to read this book. And so I bought a paper copy of it and an audiobook as well. And I've listened to it multiple times.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Well, it works.
Yeah.
It really works.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you. And, you know, like they say basically the same thing. Like we're all going to die. Like this thing does have an expiration date on it at some point, but why not live really well up until the point that you die? How about living and being healthy? And like they go snow skiing in their 70s and stuff like that. And no, it's a great book. I recommend it to anybody younger next year. Really good book. Well, anybody our age, let's say.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because before that you don't take it seriously.
In your 40s, you don't think about that kind of stuff, longevity. In your 50s, you start going, well, wait a second, you know, my knees hurt and they didn't used to hurt before. What's going on? You know? So, yeah. So you were telling me about you're a bass player now. Is that because nobody else wanted to play bass or was that a choice?
No, it's a choice, and I've always loved bass. I was a songwriter back in the 80s, and I used to, my favorite part was writing the bass lines, but I was never a bassman. So either I hired a bassman or I played it on the keyboard and tried to make it look as real as possible, or sound as real as possible, which I did a pretty good job at. Because when you know how it's supposed to feel, you can play around with your keyboard and your bender and whatever, and try to get that natural feel.
Yeah.
But when I turned 54, I believe, I just figured, hey, why don't I just buy a bass and start playing?
Yeah.
And luckily, I was working for who I'm working now, AVL Media Group, which is a division of Intellimix, which used to carry a lot of musical instruments.
Yeah. How convenient.
So huh?
How convenient.
How convenient. Exactly. So I went to Steve Barber and I said, okay, what's the coolest bass I can buy? You know?
Yeah.
And I started looking at the offerings.
Yeah.
And actually, this is cool because we have image, right?
Yeah. Well, it's going to suck for the people just listening to it, but
well, it's a Dean Hillsborough John Lahan signature.
Oh, cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's it's a decent bass. It's not it's not anything, worth thousands of dollars.
Yeah. But it plays well and it sounds good, and it's just like lighting. We talk about this a lot when we're talking about lighting. Everything's good now. It's not like you've got good way over here on one side and really crappy way over here on the other side. Everything's good. So it's just a matter of choosing what you like the most. There's not this massive gap between like Fender and Gibson and everything else, No,
exactly. I mean, it's hard to make a bad instrument now with all with all the resources we have.
Yeah. I know a lot of people who make their own guitars now, and you can buy components from a variety of sources, including Amazon. But they're just kind of creating these Frankenstein guitars and doing a really nice job of it. So
there's cool instruments out there.
Yeah. I kind of went the opposite direction. So I had a really weird start. I started as a singer. And I was in the 6th grade, so I think I was about 13. And, we were doing gigs. We were doing big gigs. Like I was signing autographs and stuff when I was a singer at 13 years old. And our manager fired our bass player one day. And our manager was a Catholic priest. This story gets crazier, trust me. And he fired our bass player and said, here, Marcel, learn to play it at rehearsals. He says, learn to play it. And, it's like 4 weeks till our next gig or whatever. So I had to learn to play an instrument. Didn't play any. I played a tiny little bit of guitar, but like just twang, Smoke on the Water or something. But, I had to not only learn to play an instrument, I had to do 40 songs in 4 weeks,
That's a challenge.
And sing. I was the singer. So I had to sing and play.
Singing and playing bass it's something.
It takes a minute, and I only had a minute to figure it all out. And somehow I did, though. I mean, I became a bass player and a singer.
10 years and I still struggle with that.
Yeah. And then went on to decide, I just want to be a bass player now. And I just kind of backed up a little bit on the stage, and I did background vocals for the most part, and didn't sing quite as much. But then I went to work for a music store and ended up being a part owner in a chain of music stores based out of Calgary. And, selling all this stuff and whatever, I just got rid of all my stuff. I never played anymore. And whenever I picked something up, it was always a guitar. And, because you were always like showing expensive guitars to kids or whatever. And so you'd play a couple little notes and you'd figure some stuff out to just demo a guitar or make a amp sound good or something. And so now I own a bunch of guitars and I think one bass. And I don't, if I pick anything up, it's a guitar, not a bass.
Wow.
But I have a peeve though. And I wonder if you're this guy. Let's hope not. Guitar players who become bass players and play the bass like a guitar. Like, I mean, just basically it's a guitar, but it's only got 4 strings.
Yep.
And I don't like it. Like, it's not the same feel.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
I don't mind melodic bass.
Yeah.
Up to a certain point. There are some great songs out there that have melodic bass.
Well, like Geddy Lee. Geddy Lee.
Yeah, well, exactly. But bass is the infrastructure of a sound along with the drum.
Yeah.
So I think that it should just be the what do you call it? The foundation.
Yeah, I agree with you completely.
Yeah.
And a really good bass player could just be going dunk 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 dunk. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be all kinds of crazy licks and stuff, but it just makes that foundation so solid. And I know so many of those guys who do it really, really well. And there's a few guys who are really good bass player / guitar players. And you didn't hear the intro. My intro and outro music is a Gatto song. And so Greg Gotovitz is a very good friend of mine, one of my best buddies. And he's a guy who was a very good bass player, very good singer, and is also a great guitar player. And so he played the instruments differently. He didn't just play a bass like a different guitar. So
well, sometimes you can adapt. I mean, if I'm playing alone, I'm just having fun, I'll be all over the neck.
Yeah.
If I'm playing with other people, I'm just sitting, what they call the money notes.
Yeah.
Down at the end of the neck.
Yeah.
What really makes the sound, the song sound good.
Yeah.
That's where I'll be navigating, and I'll just try to stay in my spot. And not
so do you actually gig? Do you go out and gig with guys?
Not really.
No.
Not really. Not
just
that
I
don't want to. It's just I'm still working a lot.
Yeah.
So and I'm starting to think that at this time and age, I'm not sure I really have time to work. So many other things to do.
Yeah, it's funny.
But anyway,
it's funny.
Seeing that people seem to be living older and older.
Yeah.
Like my father's 83 and he didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
So I figure, okay, if I'm going to be around till, I don't know, 90, 95, which is thinkable.
Yeah.
Well, I better have a lot of money stashed up,
Yeah, that's the thing, huh?
So I'm not in too much of a hurry to pull the plug like my father did at 50.
Yeah. Well, the other weird thing, and sorry to go down this morbidity route, but my girlfriend and I were talking about this. Like, okay, so let's think, what if you were able to live to 110 or 120 or whatever? Because with all of the longevity hacks and stuff that are happening now, it's not unthinkable that you could live to 120, 125 years old.
Actually,
quite reasonably.
I'll just say this. I always tell everybody I'm going to live to 120.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is my philosophy. If I make it, I'm right. And if I don't make it, nobody will ever have the occasion to tell me I was wrong.
That's true, huh? Yeah. Yeah. Tell me I'm wrong. I dare you.
I don't care.
No, it's totally true. Well, and there's a guy, I forget his name. He did a book called Superhuman that I listened to. He's a biohacker and, a longevity guy for sure. And he talks about, I think he thinks that he's going to live to 160. And, but he's literally like, one of these guys that's pumping all kinds of different wacky things into his body and trying every experimental everything that he possibly can, and just milking every inch out of every single cell in his body. But what we were talking about, my girlfriend and I, so let's say you could live to 120. After 80, I think life starts getting lonely because your kids are grown up. They have their own kids. That becomes their sort of core unit, them and their kids. Their parents are more of a pain in the ass than they are like somebody that they want to spend a lot of time with anymore. A lot of your friends have died. Most of your friends, sometimes all of your friends, sometimes your siblings may have already passed on or whatever. Your siblings are older or less healthy than you, and they've passed on. And so I'm just imagining that, like, you're in great shape or whatever, you're healthy, you're going to live to 100 years old, but everyone around you has died, and it just becomes so lonely. So not only are you looking at your cash going, geez, I'm running out of money. If I knew I was going to live to 100, maybe I would have saved more. But you're also looking around you and going, I don't know anyone anymore. You know, it's kind of weird.
But then again, I think Madonna has a solution to that. Just reinvent yourself.
Yeah, that's true. Huh? That's true. That's
just
true.
Go somewhere else. Keep being creative.
Yeah.
I mean, I always figured there's a lot of stuff I'd like to do now that I don't have time, and I figure, well, I gotta keep some projects for later in case I'm still around.
Yeah, that's true. Huh?
That's how I see it. And it might not be with my friends, might not be with my kids. We'll see what happens. We'll just move on to something else.
Yeah. So I touched on it earlier. You have a podcast, and it's called BackStage Cowboys.
Yeah.
And so first of all, tell me how that came about and the name, and are you still doing it? And tell me about BackStage Cowboys.
Well, I am still doing it. I'm not recording episodes regularly because I'm pretty sure you're the best person to understand that it's very time consuming.
It is.
So whenever I have, some time to myself, I'll reach out to some people, or if there's an opportunity somewhere, I'll just record an episode and put it up there. The idea came maybe some 10 years ago. I was head of lighting department at Claude Focus, an audio lighting video shop in Montreal. And on Friday afternoons, if we weren't loading a truck or something, we were just chilling, and we were at the back of the shop having a beer and talking about all sorts of stuff. And so many great stories came out of those gatherings. And at some point, I had a partner back then who was handling the audio section, and I said, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool, like, to share these stories with whoever wants to hear them? Why don't we just start a podcast or something?" And the guy says, "Yeah, that's a cool idea." So at some point, I moved on, and he actually he went to what was it? Vietnam or something like that, Taiwan. Anyway, he went there for a while, and when he came back, I had already put everything in place. I figured, we need to do this for real.
Yeah.
But when he came back, he got a job at Solotech, and he was very busy. So I said, "Yeah, okay, well, whatever. I'll just carry on the project." At the same time, the idea was to create a sort of lounge where old guys and new guys, guys and girls, could meet up and mingle and share stories and learn stuff. And I was really aiming towards education and helping the younger guys make their way into this mess or
this wonderful business.
Yeah, this wonderful business. That's what I should be saying.
Yeah.
So anyway, if I had that when I was young, I might have done the move earlier, as I was saying.
Yeah.
So I just decided to start that. So I created the BackStageCowboys.com website and the podcast and a blog, and then a YouTube channel with a couple of things where sometimes I do product reviews on that.
Yeah.
Now for the products I have the opportunity to play around with, since I'm working for a distributor.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and I'm the honest guy.
Yeah.
So I'll grab a product and I'll do an honest review on it, whether it's my boss or not that's distributing it. I'm always honest, and even like when AVL hired me, first thing I said is, the worst thing you can do is sell the wrong product to somebody, because those are
Yeah.
all my friends out there on the field. So if something goes wrong at 3 a.m., I'm getting the call.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's get this right from the start, okay?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So
So,
if I have what you need, fine, I'll be more than happy to provide it. And if I don't have what you need, I won't have a problem sending you to a competitor,
yeah.
because that's what you need.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's interesting. So you've done I think I read you've done 26 episodes so far.
I think you know better than I do.
So around yeah, so you haven't been quite as active as we are, cuz you
No.
started a year before us. We started in 2019. Similar idea, by the way. The funny thing about Geezers of Gear, though, is when we started it, the geezers were me and one of my employees who worked for me. We were the geezers. We were basically old guys that were going to talk about gear.
Yeah.
And then we had people reach out to us and say, "Hey, I want to come on your podcast." And I think I'm a geezer. I could probably come on. And so it kind of shifted where the geezer became the guest more than it was us, right? But we've had lots of young guys, young girls, ladies on the podcast, and so Geezers of Gear now is just kind of a funny name that sometimes is in the way, because people are like, well, I don't know if I'm old enough, but I'd like to come on your podcast. No, you're good. You're old enough. Sorry, I had to cough there. So yeah, it's fun talking to a podcaster because, I like to geek out on technology and how to do a good podcast. And, like I said, I appreciate the fact that you have a microphone, because not everyone does. And I don't force it on people. Like the bigger podcasts, the guys and girls who are doing podcasts for millions of people, and they're bringing in $100,000 or more an episode for sponsorship and stuff. What they'll do is they'll package like an audio package and send it out to the person, and sometimes even a video package too, and they sometimes send a person out to set it all up and create a remote video studio for the guest. Obviously for you and I, we can't really do that. We can't be sending equipment out to.
No, and that's not the goal either.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you can create a great content without necessarily being high end.
Yeah.
But just being like good enough that it's pleasant to listen to.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And, some of the tools now too, like the one that we use, Riverside, has a lot of audio processing in it. And it's all up processing. So they're basically assuming that people are treating this like a Zoom call, talking directly into their laptop or whatever. So they're doing echo cancellation, noise cancellation, enhanced audio. They're leveling audio, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. As far as making sure that the mix is right. They'll just fix the mix. And
not everybody does like I do, hang coats and blankets all around to just dampen down the echo.
Yeah. Well, you don't need to anymore. You just don't need to anymore. I mean, with audio specific platforms out there that make the tools so that you can record really good audio even directly off your iPhone. It's not really necessary. So not everybody is going to have a Shure SM7B or, a big mixer or any of that stuff. It's like me, like I keep buying cameras thinking I need a $500-600 camera to record my podcast. And I always end up right back on my laptop camera because it's just the easiast thing. I'm sitting right here. The camera's right there.
Yeah.
I don't need to download or upload anything. It's pretty straightforward.
Well, I've tried a PTZ camera lately.
Yeah.
And because I'm going somewhere else here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all
I
good.
just had an idea.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I do presentations.
Yeah.
And I had to talk to a bunch of dealers in the States, and I had to present some spotlight fixtures.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do something a bit more dynamic than just sitting in front of my laptop. I wanted to
Yeah.
be able to show some gear and actually open up a spot and show why this spot is particular, and why this is better than anything else that's out there and
Right.
whatnot.
Yeah.
So I pulled out a PTZ camera because we're doing BZB gear now, and
Okay.
we're distributing that in Canada.
Cool.
And
I'll have to hit you up for a camera after. Just kidding.
well, we can talk to Steve about it, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, I pulled out a camera right out of the box, hooked it up to my computer, opened up Zoom, bam. It was following me all over the showroom.
Yeah.
It was amazing. You just have to understand how the camera thinks.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole bunch of settings in there. You can actually set zones, and that it won't move between this point and this point. But if you pass that line, then it'll adjust on you, so it's not constantly moving.
Right. Yeah.
But I found out that if I move over like to a specific spot, and I want to show something, but the camera's zoomed on me, right? So then I'll go past that spot, and then I'll come back like 2 feet, and then the camera won't move for 2 feet, but it's actually focused on what I want to show. So you just have to sort of play around with that.
Yeah.
But I was really amazed. I mean, that the pan tilt and the zoom were actually plug and play.
Yeah. I was using one called Osmos or something like that. I can't remember the name of it, but I just still, again, I prefer using the camera in my laptop just because it's easier and it's right in front of me all the time, and I don't have to worry about where it's going, or if if it's aimed at something I don't want it aimed at or whatever, So,
and you can actually just move away from the image if you need to do something,
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Or I pause it and go do something, you know. But generally, I don't do anything. Like, I'm sitting in front of the camera talking to a guest, and I just want to be focused on the guest. And I just found this to be the easiest way. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. And the cool thing is, because of the popularity of podcasting, there's more and more companies who are making, like, this is a podcast microphone, this is a podcast boom. I'm using a podcast piece of software. I'm using a switcher over here that's a podcasting switcher. I'm using a podcasting mixer. And when everything is made for podcasting, it just makes it, that much easier. And I don't know, things just seem to work better.
I have a hard time getting accustomed to that.
Yeah.
I figure a mic's a mic, right? I've got a condenser mic here.
Yeah.
I've had it for 25 years.
Yeah.
And it works great. That was way before podcast era.
Yeah.
It sort of reminds me of poutine sauce.
I don't get where this is
going.
Sorry,
I just made a left turn here.
I like it. I like poutine sauce.
There'll be a link, believe me.
All right.
Poutine sauce, here's the thing. They actually sell a thing called poutine sauce.
Ah.
Okay? And I laugh every time. I think there's no such thing. It's just gravy.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Funny.
It's gravy.
It's true.
You don't need to call it poutine sauce.
Yeah, that's funny. No, that's a good point, because you can get $20 more by calling a mic a podcast mic.
Exactly. That's my point.
I get it. Yeah, I completely get it.
Because that mixer I have, it works beautifully for podcasting.
Yeah.
Actually, what is it? It's a recording station. It's a digital audio recording station.
Yeah. But, I find that when you use podcasting tools, it's like, I've got this little device called a Stream Deck. And when I'm recording our intros and stuff, and I'm trying to get it up here without pulling the cord out of it.
Oh, yeah, I know that. That is amazing. What a beautiful invention.
So when I'm recording all of our intros and stuff, I just hit buttons on this thing, and it brings up different screens for me with different logos, and it'll record, it'll pause, it'll do all kinds of different things. So play music, it'll do all kinds of things. And then on my mixer, I've got all these funny sound effects, where you could do clapping and birds chirping and ridiculous sounds.
Because you do all that stuff live, right?
I don't.
I edit afterwards, which is, tedious. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I just like some of those tools, and I've found that, and Riverside, I will tell you, like, one of these days I'll share a screen with you and show you how the editing works on Riverside, and you'll be blown away. You'll be like, okay, that's what I'm doing from now on. Because if you're spending an hour editing, I guarantee Riverside will get that down to 10 minutes. It's just so easy.
That's where the few months makes a difference. Like, you're not quite 60 yet. I'm 60. So now you're teaching me all this stuff, and where podcasting is at right now, where
Yeah.
I'm still trying to use the old tools,
Yeah.
and I kind of don't understand what podcasting equipment necessarily has more than
Yeah.
regular recording equipment, and
Yeah.
now I'm starting to understand.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to talk to anybody. I'd talk to you about that stuff anytime. It's got nothing to do with age or even the length of time. I'm just nuts. I'm nuts when it comes to this stuff. Like I'm always A, looking for a better way to do everything, B, looking for an easier way to do everything. So
Yeah.
I've got this crazy efficiency brain, where it's like there's got to be something that can shave 4 seconds off of this process. And so I'm always looking for new tools, and it's crazy. It's something that's probably slowly driving me completely nuts, but
Well,
I
I
have fun.
can certainly relate to that. Maybe being from Quebec is my mentality is a bit different, where I'm used to working with no budget.
Yeah.
So I'm used
Yeah.
to trying to make things work with whatever I have handy.
Yeah.
And at a point you realize that, well, it's not the most efficient way of doing things.
Yeah. That's true. But I mean,
Mm.
I'm similar too in that I'm trying to repurpose things or whatever, but it's just when it comes to the things I guess that really matter to me, and putting out a good podcast really matters to me. I always want to do the best job I can. Yet, until just recently, I've done it completely on my own, while running a couple of companies at the same time. And now I have Sarah, who's our producer, and she does a lot of the background work, like you said, going out and booking guests, and
Oh, she's
even
amazing.
dealing with sponsors, and now she's even getting involved in some of the editing process, and hopefully we'll take that all over at some point. So really all I'm going to have to do is show up and record the podcast. That's the general idea anyways. But yeah, so anyways, it's fun. I'm always happy to get on a call with you and talk through all the geeky stuff though.
Yep.
So 30 years in the business, and you mentioned, I think, that you started in lighting design, or no?
Well, I'm trying to figure in my head here how far back I need to go to get this to get
Yeah.
this done. And by the way, I say this every time I speak publicly. I'm a French guy,
Yeah.
and sometimes I start thinking in French and I speak in English, and the translation doesn't always make it. So
That's okay.
I might say something weird once in a while.
It's
Don't
okay.
worry
You
about
wouldn't be the first person.
it. No, I'm pretty sure.
I've heard a lot of weird things on this podcast, I promise you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, lighting business, how that started. Um, let's go back to the days where I was a computer technician, and I was working for Urgence Santé, which this was before the 911 call center. You had a number for firemen, you had a number for police, and you had another number for an ambulance.
Okay.
So I was working for the ambulance section. I was working on the computers back then. We used to pull cables, coax cables, so that computers could talk to each other. And I also had a cabling company back then on my own. And at a certain point, I sort of thought that I can't keep on doing this forever, because it was a union house. It was it's government based. It was a good job. We had good pay was okay, but we had a lot of advantages.
Yeah.
But everybody was depressed in there, because they were always asking for more, and they figured that the only way to get more is to, I don't know, cry, I guess. And I figured, well, you know what? I mean, I don't need to depend on the government to decide what I need to do. I'll just make a left turn and do something else. So a lot of members of my family were financial advisors. So I decided to follow in their footsteps and become a financial advisor. So
Oh, really?
Yeah. So around 93, I quit my job, started selling mutual funds and doing tax reports and selling some insurance also. And only to find out that that's boring stuff, man.
Yeah. Sounds boring.
and it just didn't feel right. I was in my 30s, and it was like, I'm telling this 75-year-old man who's obviously a lot richer than I am how to manage his money.
Yeah.
It felt wrong. I was very well backed up by companies and all my family we had some experts in there. My father was a financial planner. He was, and he still is. Sure, I had a lot of advice all around me, but it just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And in 2000, my mother died of brain cancer at 59.
Ooh.
And it kind of shook me. I figured I thought my mother was going to live forever, right?
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I thought, okay, is this how life works? All
Yeah.
right, so this stuff can happen to you. All right, it just gave me a different look on life,
Yeah.
and kind of the urgency to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
And just about at that time, my best friend, who was in a band with me back in the 80s, he used to imitate Elvis. And yeah, a little anecdote on that.
In French.
No, he was singing in English, but nobody
okay.
could really make out what he was singing. But it didn't matter because where we were playing, nobody spoke English anyway. So
Yeah. True.
but he had the intonation, he had the look and all that, so it was good. And at some point, the band kind of kicked me out because I was just a pain. For me, you had to hit the right chord and make it really, because music is feeling, and there's a reason why a specific chord is there. It makes you feel something, and they were just doing it straight. So anyway,
you were a perfectionist.
Yeah, sort of. So they got tired of me. They kicked me out, and then they told the singer that well, let's just tell him we're quitting. We're stopping the band, and once he's out, we'll just continue. And he said, yeah, fine, no problem. So when they kicked me out, he left the band too, and we became best friends, and we've been together for 40 years.
Wow,
And so
that's cool.
Yeah, and he married my wife's best friend.
Wow.
So the four of us have been together for 40 years.
That's
wild. We literally have dinner every night.
Yeah, I love
7 days
That's
a week together.
That's cool. Cool,
so
but
anyway,
a little weird.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a special story. Someday I'll have to write a book on that because we've been through
sounds
so
like
much.
Yeah.
So anyway, someday he walks into my office, and he was head of the computer department at an engineering firm in Montreal, and I had my my financial business. And he comes walking into my office, and he says, "Oh, I just got a call from an old friend of mine in Ontario, and he says he'd like us to organize a show like we used to do back in the day." I say, "You crazy? We don't have time for this. I got my business, you got yours." I mean, and anyway, whatever. A couple of weeks later, we were on the road with this old van, and we were going to do the show with a bunch of talent that we had gathered all around us.
Yeah.
So within that talent that we had with us were 5 little girls who were 10 years old, and they would just eat the stage. We were just amazed. We said, "Geez, they give a hell of a show,"
Yeah.
So
what did they do though? They were singers or dancers,
they were just dancing and singing, but actually lip syncing more than anything else.
Yeah.
To the Backstreet Boys and whatever was going on at the time. And my friend said, "Hey, when we came back from that show, we were." That's funny because we were driving back, and we figured, well, we're too old for this. We're never doing this again. And a couple of weeks later, he had his music and dance school. He opened up that.
Oh,
and
geez.
Yeah, and anyway, those little girls, he said, why don't we give them a chance? Why don't we do something? Do some shopping center shows or something like that. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? So I put together a lighting kit with whatever I found in scrap yards, and I built my first lighting console out of household dimmers.
Wow.
Yeah. And then later we had.
In what year? This is in the 90s?
That was in 97.
Jeez.
And that was just before the ice storm, actually. And that ice storm kind of played in favor for us, because a lot of people had TV antennas, and they all broke with the ice. So we went around asking people, you want to get rid of your antenna? We'll take it down for you. And we gathered them up, and we hired a guy that put a decor together, and we actually created a monster. Uh, those little girls went on to becoming a local group called the Baby Spice. So
Oh,
they were actually Spice Girls impersonators.
huh.
At first, just lip syncing, and then after that, starting to record. We had a couple of okay singers in there, and then good singers, and they kept us on tour for 6 years,
Jesus.
650 shows.
And did you guys did you like own a piece of them or something? Like did you have them signed to some sort of an agreement or were you just
Yeah,
their production?
they had a contract with a producer,
Okay.
and we were just the crazy guys in the back making all this happen.
Yeah.
We just decided, hey, we're gonna do shows like if it was I don't know, Cher.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I learned all about lighting at that time
But
because
it's
I knew
funny you
nothing.
say that you were building a console because like if you told me it was the 70s, okay, that makes perfect
Hmm.
sense. But in the 90s, like 97, I think the Hog was already out, wasn't it? Didn't the
Yeah,
Hog 2 come out in like
yeah.
94
Well,
or
it
something?
started off with just simple dimmers and lights. And at a certain point, the producer who used to buy bankruptcies and stuff like that,
Yeah.
at some point delivered a bunch of cases at the local where we were. And I opened up those cases and I find track spots, high-end
Okay.
track spots, and some kind of console I never could understand. I don't even know what it was up to this day. But I did get my hands on an American DJ thing, and I put something together. That's how I started playing with moving lights.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just grew, and then I did some studio work. I wrote a lot of songs for the girls and all that, and so we did, quite a bit of things over the years. And when the tour ended, at some point where it was just, it just didn't happen anymore, and we were tired of being poor. I'll be
Yeah.
honest with you. That was pretty much the day that I decided to stop doing music and stop doing all that because I just figured, hey, why don't I start making a decent living here?
Yeah.
Because we were just living off our passion.
Yeah. I
So
understand.
I first thing I did when the tours ended, I knocked on the door of Claude Focus and I said, well, I went to Soul Tech too. I said, hey, I'm free. Uh,
That
I,
was Solotech when it was Denis Lefrancois, right?
yeah,
Like this is
exactly.
before
But
the current
yeah,
version of Solotech.
yeah, but I just went to the lighting department and said, well, okay, I just finished a tour and I'm sort of available. And they said, well, send us your resume. I said, oh, okay, well, that means you don't need me. So I
Huh.
moved on to Cloda. I knocked on the door and I said, hey, I'm available. And they said, okay, go see the shop manager.
Hmm.
And he had me soldering cables at the back of the shop for $9 an hour.
Huh.
And I took
Wow.
it. I
Yeah.
actually took it. I said, hey, okay, you want to give me a chance? All right, I'll take it.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, I was out on the road as head electric.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, who were you to say no to something like that? Because you wanted to step into a new industry. You've got no,
yeah,
you've got no
no
background or
credentials,
history or
nothing. Yeah,
experience or credentials.
yeah,
Yeah. So they're taking a chance on you. They're putting you at the bottom of the totem pole. And I know a lot of guys who did that exact same thing that you did, but worked for
yeah,
free,
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
3 months, 6 months, whatever, hey, we'll give you concert tickets or we'll give you lunch every day or something.
Mm-hmm,
So how was, so this, I met Harry Cloda probably 92, 91,
mm-hmm.
92, which was my sort of early days with Martin. Well, Martin's distributor Trackerman at the time, and did a bunch of business with Harry. I like Harry. He's a colorful
Absolutely.
guy. Colorful
Yeah.
guy.
Indeed.
I,
I got to get him on my podcast.
yeah, I remember some really funny evenings with Harry, or celebrations, let's call them, with Harry. We had a lot of fun. I haven't talked to him in a long time. I got to reach out to Harry one of these days.
Yeah, I talk to his
Say hi.
son, Corey,
Yeah.
quite regularly.
Does Harry still work?
No, he sold he sold the building a few years ago,
Okay.
and then he downsized,
Hmm.
And now I know that all audio, video, and lighting were sold to LSM.
Okay.
And I think, well, there's still the inflatable games that
Right. Yeah, he did
that
really well in that business.
yeah, that Danny Zakarian is sort of in charge of. I don't know up to this day if Harry's still involved or if Danny owns everything, or I'm not exactly
Yeah.
sure. But I
Interesting.
know that the games are still happening. I'm not
Yeah.
exactly sure if Harry's. I know he was sick at a certain time. He was
Oh no.
had an operation, all that, but apparently he's okay now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a good guy. I had a lot of fun with Harry. It was
Oh yeah.
always interesting. It was never boring.
No, for sure.
Never boring. Well, and your boss
Yeah.
as well. I've known him a long time.
Yeah, I haven't no I met Steve actually when he hired me for the first time.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've known
It's-
him. I lived in Canada, I think. I knew him probably in the 80s. I've known him a long, long time. But
yeah.
another good guy, really smart guy. He's done a lot of really bright things. And so anyways, let's get back to your story because we'll get to AVL. But so you spent a few years at Clota, right?
Well, yeah, actually I was at Clota for a while and I was just freelancing. And after a while then I started doing tours, so uh I did a lot of comedy. I also did dance, I did music, films, all sorts of things. I've been touring all over the place and designing lights.
Yeah.
And yeah, after
Why comedy?
uh, I was lazy.
Yeah.
Comedy's
And it was
cool
easy.
because it's very simple. You get to
Yeah.
the venue at 3 p.m. At 4 p.m., you're already drinking beer. And I have a funny anecdote on that. I was doing a show in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, which is basically half an hour from my house.
Yeah.
And so we back up the truck and we load in, start putting up the decor and all that. So at 4 p.m. we're done. So we're at the restaurant drinking beer, eating, and I was a heavy guy. I was like 280 pounds back then.
Oh.
And and so we get to the venue around 6:30, and I get a call from the comedian's girlfriend. So he's sick. He's got gastro. He just cannot leave his room. We're gonna have to cancel the show. And this was a cabaret kind of venue, so people were starting to arrive. And I said, "Oh, that's not good."
Yeah.
And what's worse is that I'm in no shape to dismantle right now.
Oh God.
I'm in shape to sit down and do this show and sleep through the show. And I used to do that regularly. I used to fall dead asleep during the show. And whenever there was a cue coming up, for some reason, I would just open my eyes, hit the button, and then go back to sleep.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
So when you're a lazy guy, that's the kind of show you want to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, comedy's big in Montreal too, right? So I'm
It's
guessing there was a
huge.
lot of it available.
Yeah, and the other thing is there's a comedy school,
Oh,
L'École
I didn't know
Nationale
that.
de l'Humour, and they put out dozens of comedians every year. So,
Ah,
and I actually worked for them for a few years. I did their when the students finish their courses. At the end, they do some kind of a tour throughout Quebec and sometimes New Brunswick,
hmm,
and that's part of their course. So
interesting.
I was a lighting designer on that for a couple of years. So I kind of met some comedians that are very famous today. I
Yeah.
saw them at their very beginning.
Well, I know I've been in Montreal in the summer when the comedy festival's there, and just super fun. Such a great place to be. I know in the business it's a kind of a pain because it's so crazy in the summer
Yeah,
in Montreal,
yeah,
but I thought that was so cool. Like, what a cool city to be in the summer when that's going on.
yeah. Oh
But
yeah, for sure.
and what's that show that was out of Montreal too? Laugh
Well, just for laughs.
just for laughs. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a pretty big deal for a long time. I don't know if it still is, but
Well, it's there was a problem with that at some point. Just for laughs, the owner got caught up
it
in
was no longer funny.
Yeah, exactly. It was no longer funny. He got
Yeah.
caught up in sexual abuse stuff and
Ooh.
accusations and stuff like
So
that.
so it was just for a little bit more than laughs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But
Just
anyway,
for
they picked
laughs
up
and then a little bit more.
afterwards. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's Grand Rire now. There's a couple of other organizations.
Yeah.
But yeah, comedy is still very, very strong. I mean, a good comedian will tour for years and years. It's very easy to sell a comedy show in
Yeah.
Quebec,
Yeah.
whereas music shows are having a hard time.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. So if you're a well-known band and you start touring, you might tour for a few months. Whereas the better comedians, the ones that have a lot of a lot of followings, they'll tour for years and years.
Wow.
I mean, yeah,
I didn't know that there was a problem with music there. Why is that?
I don't know.
Huh.
I don't know. There's just a lot of demand for laughter. I guess people
Yeah.
want to forget
Well,
about
that's
life.
not
I
a bad
guess,
thing.
and,
No,
and
I
this is an old phenomenon. It was like that back in the 30s, the 40s. People were living miserable lives. There were no jobs,
yeah,
but they would spend like the 5 cents to go to the theater and watch people make them laugh.
vaudeville or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting because music, live music is selling so well everywhere right now. Like
Yeah.
it's insane what's going on right now. I love it. I mean, it's amazing for the industry and stuff, but I'm just blown away by the appetite for live music. It's
Mm.
wild, you know. Yet, like I think, it's funny because I think in Canada, a lot of cities in Canada, Calgary included, have better live music scenes than a lot of the bigger cities in the US, which is kind of weird. Like,
Mm.
here, if I want to go out on a Wednesday night and see a band at a local club or whatever, it's not that easy. It's just
Hmm.
really not that. Yeah, I could go to a venue and see, you know, a big band and pay $500 for tickets or whatever. But I'm talking about having a couple beers, seeing a really good band in a bar, like you
Yeah.
used to do all the time when I was playing in bars when I was young. Uh, it just doesn't exist as much here.
Mm.
It's kind of a dead thing right now. Whereas live music in general is huge, massive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Right.
one of the things I think is really cool about your current employer, AVL Media Group, sorry, and is basically the way that you guys work with the brands, where uh, it's not the traditional distributor manufacturer model where you're responsible, where you pay 40% less than the selling price or whatever. You make a big profit margin, and you're responsible basically for everything from your incoming doc to the outgoing doc and to taking care of the customer and all of those things. Now, instead, you act almost more like a fulfillment center and support center, but you charge a much smaller profit on it. And I think in a sense, it's a win-win because the manufacturer maintains control of branding because from what I understand, and you can tell me when and if I'm wrong on this, but if you're dealing with Zoom, for example, the invoice will come from Zoom. It won't come from AVL. You're basically buying directly from Zoom's Canadian office, even though it's not technically from Zoom's Canadian office. It's from AVL. Is that all correct so far?
That is correct for that particular brand.
Yeah. So
I know
maybe I'll
some
shut up and you
brands.
can explain to me
Well, I
the
can
differences.
explain up to a certain point.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: I'm a product guy,
Yeah.
so I talk about products and I try to find the proper thing for what you need to do.
Yeah.
And I'm more on the technical side.
I
So
see.
I'm technical advisory. I will help the salesman um, finalize the sale because I'm able to understand the client's needs and
Right.
find the proper product. And if so, make a design. I've done that many times.
Yeah.
Whereas as soon as we start talking about money, profit margins, and who charges what, I back away.
Yeah.
Because my world, I'm talking with Mostly with the end user.
I see.
I'm
Yeah.
talking with the people who are actually going to work with the gear. So
Yeah.
we're having a technical conversation, and we're just making it practical. We're just making it work.
Yeah. You're more
Whereas,
interested in the application and the technology and
yeah, if
the
I
fit.
was really interested in all that administration stuff, I'd still be a financial advisor.
Yeah. Yeah. I get
So
it.
at some point, I sort of backed away from that, and I said, "Hey, let's just concentrate on what I love to do. Not that I don't know how much it costs. I do. Okay.
Yeah.
And people ask me, how much is this? I'll tell a white lie and say, I don't know. You'll have to ask your salesman for a quote.
Yeah.
That's not true. I do know what the price of stuff is, but the
Yeah.
thing is, I don't want to have that conversation.
Yeah.
I want to stay technical. I want
Well,
to stay
plus
on
sometimes it's
that side.
better anyways. Like I know that I've been in companies where they did that, where they separated sort of that technical slash application slash spec side of the business with the actual sales and money side of the business. And sometimes that's really important because there might be a strategy at play with the sales management or
Exactly.
salesperson.
Yes.
And so, price is maybe a little more complicated than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And also I've found sometimes technicians getting involved in the pricing part of the deal or the commerce side of the deal or whatever sometimes can get a little messy because they don't know that there's some politics involved where we can't sell direct to this guy because of this guy
Yeah.
over here,
Yeah.
but we need to do this little roundabout deal to make sure that he's taken care of and doesn't feel slighted. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, so sometimes you're stepping into a mud puddle and you don't really see it. So that makes a lot of sense. But again, I like the way that you guys have created that business there. Like when Steve told me about it, I was like, that's really interesting. Like, why don't more companies do that? Because that seems like the future to me, where you sort of decentralize or separate those components of oh, do you want us to carry inventory for you? It's going to cost this much. Do you want us to manage just the sales and marketing side of it? It's going to cost this much. Are you going to handle your own marketing? Okay, now it only costs this much. So it makes a lot of sense, like especially with the whole Amazon fulfillment thing and stuff. Like it seems like more and more businesses are moving that direction.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's an adaptation, depending on how the manufacturer sees it, and what the market needs.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, different products are managed differently,
Yeah.
uh, depending on like I said, all of that. But in the end, we're trying to be there for whoever needs it,
Yeah.
and
So
and trying to offer a turnkey
yeah.
solution.
What lighting products do you guys offer?
Okay, well, we have several lighting lines. Our what should I say, consumer level line is Blizzard.
Okay.
So Blizzard it's Chinese products, American owned company.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No,
they're
I'm very
based in
familiar with
Wisconsin.
Blizzard. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So they've got a pretty good offering, and actually, Blizzard kind of remind me of Hyundai.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning it was like, okay, so it's affordable uh, consumer level products, and at a certain point they started developing better products. They started going towards more high end stuff.
Yeah.
Now they're offering really cool products, ETL'd, um, with up to par. I mean, if you're looking at competitor products, you're not afraid to go to a shootout or something.
Yeah.
Um,
It's interesting because like you definitely don't have to make excuses anymore for products like that. Like I remember back in the day, as we old people say, if it wasn't European or American made, it
yeah,
was going to be frowned upon.
yeah,
And especially Chinese products and ooh, it's Chinese. And they had a real stigma attached to them where they really couldn't get like over the DJ hurdle. We're DJ lights. You can't get
yeah,
past DJ lights with this
yeah,
product. And I know that companies like Elation and Chauvet have managed to really crush those barriers down. And now you're seeing, like in the intro, I read the equipment list from the Eurovision last week, and there was a lot of Chauvet stuff on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and by the way, you know, there's a lot of other Verilite is made in China now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of products that people high end is made in China now. Like a lot of products people think are American companies are, like you said, they're maybe American owned, sometimes American engineered and designed, but made in China. So um, I had a business partner who used to always say there's a big difference between made in China and Chinese made.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, and I was around in the early days when Chinese moving lights really were garbage, you know, because they could copy the hardware, but they could never really copy the software. They had a hard time reverse engineering software. So it took a long time for them to get the movement smooth instead of going like this
Yeah.
and getting it to go back to the same spot every time and stuff. You know, the little simple things they really struggled with. Today, everything is amazing. Everything's good.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking about a $10,000 Claypacky fixture or a $2,000 Blizzard or American DJ fixture, everything's good. It really is.
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
what else do you have
So
other than Blizzard?
the other we used to have AVL lights.
Okay, yeah, right, of course, and then Roby
Yeah, and
went and
I have to
screwed that
mention
up.
it because when AVL hired me, I was actually head of lighting department at Claudes,
Yeah,
and I was heading for retirement.
yeah,
So I was going to go do conferences and write books and talk to people and do other stuff.
yeah,
And I was down to 4 days a week, and I was training this my assistant, and I was heading for 3 days a week.
yeah,
And then I get the call, and they say, AVL Media Group. I said, okay, distributor, okay. Was absolutely not familiar with the distributor world.
yeah,
And they said, yeah, we need a product specialist because we have GLP, and they were working on some other brands, and they needed somebody in-house that knew what that stuff was.
yeah,
And I said, oh, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that there was a next level, because the only next level that I could think of was designing, sets and doing technical drawing and stuff like that, which I wasn't really interested in.
yeah.
So I figured, hey, this is interesting. So I actually got hired on the fact that they had GLP. So
Why is that?
well, because I'm guessing it's because if GLP is going to deal with the distributor, there has to be an expert in-house.
Oh, I see. Yeah, they needed to step up their game a little bit.
Exactly. There has to be
Right,
somebody in there who knows what this stuff is and who can answer questions and get things working and
right.
all that.
Yeah,
So and so I was the guy. And I've had, yeah, sure, I'll do that, no problem. My first mandate was actually to write a list of stuff I wanted to play with and put together a light show. So,
yeah.
oh, this is cool. So anyway, I
Fun
did that.
work.
Yeah, fun work for sure. So on top of GLP, they told me we're working on getting a console line. So I kind of backed away for a second, and I said, which one?
Yeah,
And they said, Avo Lights. Oh, yeah, okay, I know Avo Lights. That's cool. Sure. So that actually happened.
yeah.
And a couple months later, I was in London getting trained on all the all their offerings. So it's been 7 years of investing myself with Avo Lights. So it was kind of a hard news, because when Roby bought Avo Lights, I know that they in Europe they took over distribution because that's their model of business,
Right,
and then it happened in the States. So I figured, okay, just a question of time before it happens in Canada,
right.
unless they simply don't care about Canada and it's just like not enough business. But sure enough, it happened. So a note to myself: do not get attached to a product.
Yeah. Well,
But
it does suck though, because like you said, you invested time because
yeah,
they didn't always have the D9 or the Tiger or the,
No,
you know,
exactly,
they didn't always have
exactly.
those great products. And so now they've got the D9 and you're like, oh, okay, finally something really exciting that we can get it,
Yeah,
you know, wrap our
yeah,
heads around. And now you lose it, you know?
yeah. But then again, I mean, I'm still very fond of the product. I still
Yeah.
use it every day, and it's for me. I've always preached that Avo Lights was the best lighting console in the world. Prove me
Yeah.
wrong. Not that I despise Hog or MA or the other brands out there. I mean, I use them all. I know them all, and they're all very good. Um, I always said the best console in the world is actually the one you know. So,
Well, and so here's the difference between you and I, being you a technical guy, me a commercial guy. To me, the best console in the world is the one that everyone wants. So,
mm,
you know, that's the best console. And
absolutely,
right now that's the MA3. Uh,
yeah,
and number two is the MA2. You know,
hmm,
so and now
yeah,
I'm not saying it's technically the best. I'm not saying if I was a lighting programmer, it's the one that I'd want to use. I'm just saying that's the one that everybody wants to buy. So if I was gonna
wow,
fill a warehouse full of consoles, that'd be the one, you
yeah.
know?
Well, there's a logic to it too. Uh, it just when MA came up with the MA1,
Hmm.
it was revolutionary. There was nothing like it,
Yeah.
and then people started adopting it. It became the industry standard because it could do things that nothing else could do.
Yeah.
And then people got used to it, and then they put out the MA2, which was continuity. That was fine. And then
Yeah.
sometime after that, Avolites came up with something that kind of, that kind of lived up to it, up to a
Yeah.
certain point,
Uh-huh.
but for half the price. So, oh, that was interesting. And in the meantime, MA put out the MA3.
Yeah.
But then Avo came up with the Diamond 9, and that Diamond 9 is up to par as far
Yeah.
as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Problem is, MA is well established, and all I can understand all of my friends that are still out there programming lighting desks. They've been programming MAs for years. They're
Yeah.
kind of in their slippers, right?
Yeah.
It's a comfortable feeling knowing your instrument. So you're not going to make a move just because there's another product out there that does just as good, right?
Yeah. Well, I
So,
will tell you though, like during COVID, so there was a perfect storm created and a perfect opportunity for Avo. And unfortunately, Avo wasn't a big enough company in a sense to pounce on that opportunity.
mhm.
And so, you know, the MA3 came out and it had a lot of problems initially.
Well, it was an empty shell.
Yeah, it
They
had
did
a
the
lot of
same thing with the
problems.
MA2. They put out the hardware and then they
Yeah.
developed the software.
So it
Yeah.
had quite a few problems when it came out, and then COVID happened. So they didn't even really get a chance to get people to use it and to
Yeah.
get people to like it. And it was just dumped. You know, it was like,
Hmm.
we hate this thing. Give me back the MA2s. And, you know, I own a used equipment business. I don't know if you know that, but I own Gear Source.
Oh, you do?
And
I didn't. I wasn't aware.
yeah.
Oh.
So Gear Source on MA2 consoles, we watched them go from, um, let's say early 2020, they were around $12,000 US. We saw them go up to about $30,000
Hmm.
over the next couple of years as people did not want MA3s and they really wanted MA2s. Now we've seen the price really start dropping on MA2s because MA3s are more widely available and also the software is pretty rigid and
Yeah.
sturdy now
Yeah.
and it's much more reliable and people like it
Mm.
again. And so but I think in that time, in that sort of 2020 to 22 or yeah, probably 2020 to 22, I think Avo had a really cool opportunity to jump in
Yeah.
there and fill a void.
And there's
And
one thing I can say for Avolites though. When they put out a console, it's ready. It's
yeah,
roadworthy. It's complete. It works. It's stable.
yeah,
And another thing I really appreciate is that they don't rewrite the software from one generation to another. It
yeah,
just evolves.
yeah,
So if you learned Avolites 10 years ago, you can grab a D9 and do whatever you know how to do, and it still works.
It's going to make sense.
There's
Yeah.
just more, there's more ways of doing things. There's more features
Yeah.
that have been added that you might want to learn, but basics are still there.
And it looks cool.
Oh yeah, well,
It's a cool looking console. It's a really cool looking desk. If you're bored one of these days, I just had Steve Warren. You know Steve, right?
yeah,
From
of course.
Avo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had him on the podcast a couple weeks ago. He's in Portugal, ripping apart some old ancient ruins and turning them into houses. So
Oh,
he bought some land in Portugal, and it's got some houses on the land that's literally ruins. It's like 200-year-old houses
wow.
that have no roofs and stuff, and he's building them into homes, and he's
Oh,
going to
wow.
live there. Him and his wife are going to live there. So, and they're going to have like a drop-in community center kind of thing, and a yoga center, and all this stuff. Like he's got these visions for the place. But he's such a great guy. He's one of my favorite people. Just such a spirit about him, you know?
I'll definitely give that a listen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun. So anything else? Any other lighting products? Do you still do GLP?
Yes, we still do GLP. We also
it's an
have
exciting
Spotlight.
time for GLP. You got
Well,
some pretty cool
yes.
stuff coming out.
I like the mentality of GLP. I don't know up to what point we can use swear words on this
You
podcast.
can use any word you want.
Oh, that's good. I have that mentality too.
Good.
Their slogan is "We give a fuck,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Well,
they
you
really
can see
do.
it. You can
They
see
really
it.
do. And I have an anecdote on that too. At one point, we were setting up the Lady Gaga tour, which was started off in Vancouver. And Solotech got the contract to do the tour, the Joanne tour. So we were setting up like a wall of 256 JDC ones, and interlaced with bar 20s.
Yeah.
And so I went over there and helped set it up, and at the same time get some training from Carl Wake, who's the head engineer there.
Yeah, I know Carl.
And at some point they had a problem with the JDC ones because it was first generation, right?
Yeah.
They were the first to be delivered, and there was a humidity getting into the circuit boards, and they were starting to lose pixels.
Oh.
So at some point they figured out the problem. So when the tour landed in LA, there's a team of GLP people that just went to the venue, and they took down the 256 fixtures and put up new ones.
Damn.
They did that. They did the whole thing. They did the tear down and the install of the new fixtures, and they said, "Here you go. You're good to go." Now, when they say we give a fuck, I believe them.
Well, and that's a small company. That's not Roby. You know what I mean? Or Martin.
Exactly.
Like that's a little German company doing that kind of service. That's impressive. That's really
and
impressive.
lately, I asked Mark Ravenhill. I said, "Well, there's a Chauvet fixture that's pretty close to the JDC one."
Yeah.
And I said, "So how do you deal with that? I mean, how does it compare?" And he says, "Oh, it's probably just as good. It doesn't really matter because we're on to the next thing."
Yeah, it's true.
And so it's another mentality. They're actually creating lights that the designers want.
Yeah,
they want the next thing.
Go figure, right? Like,
they want what nobody's seen before.
Make things people want, and they'll spec it and they'll buy it. And wow, what a concept!
Exactly. So it's a designer's thing.
Yeah, it always has been. I mean, when I worked at Martin in the '90s, if you build stuff that designers want, companies are going to have to buy it at some point, right?
Exactly.
And then take care of the company too. Like that's the other thing. Like if you just force it on designers and the company has to buy it and you don't take care of them and you have service nightmares and all kinds of things like that, that's not going to go very well either.
No, that's something you have to give GLP. It's top-notch service.
Yeah.
Whatever you need parts, you need advice. Actually, Carl flew down from LA to Montreal to train the Cirque du Soleil folks because they were going on tour with the GLP fixtures.
Yeah.
And they wanted to be able to repair them on the spot rather than send them back to AVL, which was logical because they were touring all over the world.
Oh, wow.
So we just trained their own technicians.
Yeah. Well, it's an exciting time, like I said, for that company right now because, JDC2 and all the other new stuff that they've got coming out. Annalise, I used to work with Annalise at Martin for a number of years.
Oh, really?
She was our trade show person. and when I ran much of Martin in the 90s, and became very good friends. I really like Annalise, and she does a
yeah, me
great
too.
job over there. Yeah, she does a good job there. She's
Yeah.
awesome.
So we have that. We have another company which do high-end theatrical lights, which is Spotlight.
Okay.
So this is out of Milan, Italy,
Yeah.
and they they came up with something. It's how can I say? The relation with that company is very particular because everything's made in-house. It's
Okay.
all 100% made in Italy, and they have their own factory. So whatever you need, if you need something customized or whatever, or if you need a part, I mean, they started recently getting rid of the parts they made for they had for fixtures they made 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's
That's law. That's law in Italy. So, I have a
mhm.
lot of experience there because of Coamar. The company that I
Oh yeah.
was a part owner in purchased
Hmm.
Coamar in 2000. No, was it 2099 maybe? Uh, and just learning some of their laws and some of the ways they do things. But that mentality of, hey, you want one of the colors changed by this much or whatever, we can do that. They were
Yeah.
very much into customizing things. There's a downside to that. You end up with fixtures that don't match other people's fixtures at the end of the day because you had some small adjustment in color or in this or in that or
Oh
whatever.
yeah. Well, those are specific adjustments.
Yeah.
Whereas I've been through that with Spotlight, where ESPN wanted a specific Fresnel,
Yeah.
50-watt Fresnel.
Okay.
It was available in cool white, warm white, and they wanted RGB white. So
Okay.
they actually developed it for them,
Wow.
and that worked out really well. But that's a fixture. So the
Yeah.
fixture itself is it's a new thing, and it's well, it was a new thing back then.
Yeah.
But it's a fixture. It's not
Yeah.
an original fixture that's been modified. But I am going through that right now with Disney, who wanted to look at a fanless cyc light.
Yeah.
And the cyc light from Spotlight was very appealing for them,
Yeah.
but it had fans, and they have a policy of no no mechanics in the equipment, just
Yeah.
question of maintenance.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, actually, Spotlight turned
Until
around
you have
and
heat problems.
yeah, yeah,
And then you got a whole different maintenance issue.
exactly.
It's always a trade-off, right? Yeah, we can get rid
Yeah,
of the fans, no problem. You think they're high maintenance? Yeah. Just wait until you take the fan away.
yeah. Well, they did it, so
Yeah.
apparently they found a way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then again,
Hey,
it all depends on the environment you're working in.
what it's the main guy from CBC. What's his name? Is it still the same guy that I knew for like 25 years? I can't remember his name anymore.
Hold on a second.
The main like designer specifier for all the CBC stuff.
Oh, I'm getting old, man.
I can't remember his name either.
Oh,
So two old guys trying to remember a guy's name that we haven't talked to in a couple of years.
uh,
I used to see him at every trade show, and he'd always come up to me and say, "Marcel."
Plotkin.
I can't remember. I mean, I could probably look it up in my own system and tell you who it was, but it doesn't matter. I was just wondering if it was somebody that you knew.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's Plotkin, the last name.
It doesn't ring a bell. That's not who I'm thinking of, anyways. But I mean, probably the last time I did any business with him was, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. So it's probably the person's retired by now who I was talking to. But he was there forever. I mean, I knew him for years, and I'd see him at every trade show, and he'd always come up with some wild idea for a change to a fixture or a new fixture or whatever. And if I was with Comar at the time and Bruno from Comar was there, typical Italian factory owner and very smart sort of genius thinker, he would say, yes, we'll build it immediately, and he'd go back to the factory, stop everything, and create this fixture for the guy at CBC. Well, I mean, not thinking it had to have CSA approval. It had to have this. It had to be ready for this. You had to produce 100 of them. They all needed to be the same. Like it's a little more complicated than going back to the factory and building one, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Funny stuff.
Yeah.
I love Italian people. Like I love their passion towards creating beautiful products and quality and all of those things.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, I mean, I've always looked at it as sort of like a Ferrari-esque sort of thing. Like, you know, you might have to carry a few extra tools in your back pocket than if you were to use, you know, either a Chinese manufactured or American manufactured product. But it's going to have a lot of horsepower and it'll be fun as hell to drive, you know?
Oh yeah. Well, I can tell you the experience I have with Italian fixtures. It's just the ease of maintenance.
Really? Yeah.
And that's well, we were talking about PTZ cameras earlier, and the presentation I made. Presentation was on spotlight fixtures, and I actually opened up a fixture live right during the presentation, and it's 2 screws and the power supply drops in your hands.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I've seen. You know, stuff happens, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we sold 2 follow spots to an academy in Culver, Indiana.
Yeah.
And when they got there, for some reason, one of the 2 follow spots wasn't working.
Yeah.
So this is spotlight. This is unacceptable.
Yeah.
So I went up to my service area and I asked the guys, well, what do you know about these spotlights? And can you tell me, do you have an idea why one of them is not working? And they said, yeah, during CSA, they put the light back together a bit quickly and they broke a cable. So they sort of fixed it really quickly and didn't have time to put it on the test bench because it had to ship right away. I said, oh, okay, I get it. Okay, so we know that this is the part that's failing right now.
So you're doing the field CSA stuff, the stuff where they come out to your shop and do the CSA?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember having to do that stuff with European products.
For certain products, we still have to do that.
Yeah.
And anyway, I figured, okay, so I just pulled apart from one of our spotlights, jumped on a plane. I went to see Steve Costers, and I said, Steve, we have this problem, and I have the solution.
Yeah.
He says, yeah, go fix it. So cool. Next morning, I knock on the door, and the client was a very, very nice lady. She opens up the door and was so surprised to see me there. She said, weren't you in Montreal yesterday? I said, yeah, but you have a broken follow spot, and that's unacceptable. So I walk in there 20 minutes later, didn't even take the spot off the stand. 20 minutes later, it was up and running.
Oh, that's cool. And that's memorable stuff, though. That keeps clients for you. You know what I mean? Like that. Those kind of stories are the one about GLP in LA taking all the fixtures down or whatever. Like that. Those stories are the ones that you remember. And it's funny because a few weeks ago I had somebody on who was involved in a Super Bowl halftime show that I was involved in with Martin. And all he could remember is Martin flew in all these engineers and techs and stuff from Denmark directly to look at some of the problems or concerns that we had in dealing with these lights. And it was the first show of that size for Martin. So they were very enthusiastically there to support their product. Yeah. And that kind of stuff is necessary. So I know that not very many people in our industry, and you know, there's one in particular, Richard Cadena, but not very many people have self-published books and and written books. And the interesting thing about you have a couple of books, but neither one is about the industry. Neither one is about lighting.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about that. Like, how were you always a writer? Did you just suddenly become one? How did that happen?
Well, I've pretty much always written, but I've never done anything with it. And I do have a book about the industry that I've been working on for about, I don't know, 7 years, 8 years, something like that. And I'll probably never finish it. I don't know. We'll see how that turns out. The book is, it's strange. Like I said, I was a heavy person. I was very, very out of shape and overweight. And at a certain point, I had to make some decisions. Yeah. Because I was like at 40, I was lazy. I was just gigging whatever I felt like gigging and
sleeping at the console.
Yeah, exactly. Sleeping at the console. We
talked about that.
Long rides, lots of restaurants, and it didn't really matter. I was living in a I had a house. It was like, those mobile houses.
Yeah.
It was a nice one, but it was still a mobile house, so very,
Yeah.
very inexpensive. So my cost of living was really low. So you know, I was
You
just
ate the
living
rest.
it really, really chill. And at a certain point, my wife, after all these years of all craziness that's been going on, she was still around. And I figured, well, if she's still around, then maybe I should do something for her. So I decided to buy a good piece of land and build a house for her,
Oh,
a
cool.
decent house,
Nice.
and next to a river and all that.
Nice.
So, but that also implied that I needed to earn a decent living. I had to make real money, and I also had to have enough energy to go through all that,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of work to be done when you're building a house.
Yeah, of course.
So that kind of woke me up, and I figured, this lifelong problem I've been having of being overweight, I had to deal with it, and I had to find a solution. So I sort of invented a solution that worked. And
Interesting.
yeah, and once I had done that, then I figured, oh, maybe other people would like to know what I've been through, because I've learned a lot in the past by reading books by experts, fine. But I love to read books by people like me who were nobodies and were able to do, something special, something that a lot of people aren't able to do, and with nothing, they
Yeah.
just out of nowhere. Just an example, you take Anthony Robbins, who didn't even have a college degree and was able to, he's probably one of the most influential people in the world right now.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I figured, yes, if a nobody like me can achieve something like that, even though it's nothing great, but did make a difference in my life. I
Yeah.
figured, why don't I just share that?
So
So,
round numbers, what was the weight loss? How much weight?
figure about 80 pounds.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's significant.
Some people lose a lot more weight than that. But it was I think it was the method that I developed that really worked, because,
Give me the 10,000-foot view.
yeah, absolutely. I'll do that. It's very simple. I I figured if I was going to make a change, it would have to be permanent.
Yeah.
I was not going to, because if you make a temporary effort, at some point, it's like pulling on an elastic. If you pull hard enough, it'll snap back in your face at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what dieting is all about, as
Of
far as I'm
course. Yeah.
concerned.
Yeah.
So I figured,
It's
if
a
I'm going to
roller
make a
coaster.
change, I'm going to make a small change, but I'm going to make it for life. So I cut butter. That's how it
Really?
started. Yeah, and then cascaded onto more stuff. Started an exercise routine that was only 10 minutes a day, but every day.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's how it started.
Yeah.
And
You
after
know what's
that,
interesting about that though? Like a lot of the longevity doctors and stuff now, grass-fed butter is actually good for you. It's one of the healthy fats. Butter and avocado, which they were both always sort of dragged through the dirt as being they're fats. You can't have those. Those are
yeah,
fats.
well,
But now scientists have finally figured out that healthy fats are good,
yeah,
and grass-fed butter and avocado are very healthy fats.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it wasn't the ingredient as much as the method.
well, what were you putting the
Right.
butter on too?
Well,
Probably a
just
big
to give you
fat
an
piece of bread.
example, you finish your gig at midnight, 1 in the morning. You get home at 2 a.m. Didn't really have time to eat or whatever, so just pop two pieces of bread in the toaster,
Yeah. It's
then pull
comfort
out the
food.
peanut butter, the jam, whatever else is lying around in the
Yeah.
kitchen, and then the toast come out, and then you put butter, peanut butter, and jam, and while you're eating those, you're sticking two other pieces of bread in the toaster, and
Yeah.
while they're toasting, you're still hungry, so you pull out the cookie bag, start
Oh
eating
boy.
cookies, and
Yeah.
then bring out the toast, and then put butter, peanut butter, jam, and why not crumbled cookies on top of that. And
Yeah.
then while I'm eating those, I pop two more in the toaster,
So
and then and then I want to make it more original, so I pull out two slices of cheese and put that on top of the whole
Jesus.
worst. I'm not kidding. I was
Yeah, you
really
had a
doing that.
problem. Yeah. But
Yeah,
it's funny because you said butter. And what are they in Atomic Habits? I forget what he calls that, like not the anchor or the magnet or something, but it's like the thing that you attribute it all to is the butter.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
butter really wasn't the problem.
No, not
It
at
was
all.
the sort of tidal wave of junk that created that was
Exactly.
bread and cookies and all of
Oh
the other
yeah.
stuff,
Oh
right?
yeah. I had a magical recipe. I'd put
Yeah.
peanut butter between my cookies because they would stick together. I could carry more from the kitchen to the living room.
Oh my God. You
Now,
were bad, man.
bad.
You were
I can't
bad.
believe I'm still healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? You stopped in time. Like
Yeah.
that's the problem. You know, friends of ours, I'm sure you have similar problems, who are either dying or dead
Yeah.
or very sick. Uh, you know, they didn't stop in time, you know, because
Yeah.
all of this stuff is reversible in a sense.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
certainly cancer is a tough one, but most of this stuff is reversible.
Yeah.
You
I'm
just
just
have to
lucky it didn't
stop
kill
early
me
enough.
before.
True. Me too. Me
Hmm.
too. You know, me too. And you know, I'm still dealing with sort of some residual effects, you know, that I have to pay attention to, specific to my heart. And but it's for things that I did bad in you know 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not for stuff that I'm doing right now because I live a pretty healthy life now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the other book was what? The other book was
Well, the other book was pretty much the story on the whole house thing.
oh, okay.
How
That's
I was
interesting.
able to buy the house I live in now, and I absolutely did not have the means to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, the big part of the story is that I told my wife that I was going to look into getting a brand new house, and you know, on a specific lot,
Yeah.
back to a river, and you know, in a specific area. And at some point, I just got scared,
Yeah.
and I was going to back away, and I found my wife crying.
Uh,
And that was the trigger. I was like, "Oh
uh,
no, I can't let this happen."
yeah, I got to
You
do
know, and
this.
so now I have to do it, and
Yeah.
I had to find a way. So
Yeah.
it's actually that second book is not exactly a book. It was a conference speech that
Oh.
I had written, and that I was actually starting to do when AVL called me, and then I put
Oh.
that on hold, and maybe a year or two down the line, I decided, well, why don't I just record it and make it available?
That's cool.
And that's what
So
I
how
did.
can
So
people get these? Both of them.
they're available everywhere on Audible,
Oh, cool.
Amazon, yeah, on iTunes. They're pretty much
What are the two
everywhere.
books called?
So the first book is called I gotta remember what it's called. Uh, the most powerful weight loss device ever made, the human brain.
There you go.
That's the book. That was it was sort of a parody towards all those gadgets that they sell to make you
Yeah.
lose weight. And I figured, yeah, well, the most powerful device, you already own it.
Retrain your brain. Yeah.
Yeah, and the
It's
other one
totally true.
is how to overcome man's biggest obstacle, himself.
A common theme.
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't go out of my way. I just recorded it. Yeah, the audio book. I kind of made some effort. I like to say that I recorded it on my iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
The only part that people may not be aware of is that I was using this mic and I had it plugged into an Avalon preamp.
So you were
And I
storing
actually,
it on your iPhone. You weren't
well,
really
yeah,
recording it on
exactly.
your
And
iPhone.
I
Yeah.
actually recorded it in my walk-in closet, which was the deadest room in the house.
Oh, cool. Cool.
But anyway, so I did that. But for the second one, it was just a conference, so it's not as good quality. But I just figured I had to get it out there
Yeah.
and move on.
So I'm
Because,
guessing, like most books, you're not quite getting rich from them yet.
oh, I'm
People
I'm
don't
not
sell
even.
books.
That's not even a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, definitely not. Well, the thing is, I mean, if whatever you do, whatever content you put out there, you have to put a lot of energy into getting it to people and
Yeah.
promoting it and all that. I had started doing it in the beginning, and then I moved on to something else. So I just let it there. No, I'm not making any money off
But
that.
even then, I mean, even if you do put a lot into it, like the percentage, you're probably got a higher likely outcome of becoming a rock star or a movie star or a wildly successful, unicorn entrepreneur or whatever than you do of becoming a successful author.
Oh yeah,
Because
for sure.
there's so much content out there. There's so much free content out there
Yep.
now. Like,
Yep.
even I'm an audiobook junkie. And even I struggle sometimes because I'm like, well, why would I buy the audiobook when I can go listen to, a whole bunch of half hour or 1 hour segments on this person where they get into much more detail than they did in the book even.
Yeah.
And it's more timely because they just recorded it last week, the book they recorded 2 years ago or whatever, right? So,
Yeah, and
but
sometimes there's a lot of content. There's a lot of irrelevant content
yeah,
in a book just because they have to fill like the 500 pages or something like that.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like a 10-page point that takes 500 pages to make.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Which is
Yeah.
one thing I decided not to go that way. So it's a
Yeah.
really short book. I think it's the audio book. I think it's 2 hours or something like that.
And then your goal was to then go out and become a public speaker as well,
Yeah.
which is obviously a very good model and a very successful model for a lot of people. Like, even if the book doesn't sell, that's not the intention. The intention is that it gives you credibility as a public speaker.
Exactly.
I'm an author.
Yeah.
I'm a celebrated author. I'm a published author, or whatever the word is, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so by being a published author, you can now go out and use that to promote your. So did you do what's it called, Toastmasters and all of that stuff, or did you just
No. I
wing
just
it?
put it out there on what was it? Create Space, which
Yeah.
was the Amazon platform. So you can actually get a paper copy if you want.
No, but I mean, for the
But
public speaking thing, like, did you
oh
go do
no,
training or
I
anything?
didn't make it. I didn't make it all the way there. I was starting
Oh,
to look into different platforms
yeah.
because I was still breaking it in.
Yeah.
So I was still doing presentations for local, things around me just to break it in and get used to,
Right.
to the idea of doing public speaking and make it at ease. And my point was, working a lot with comedians. Actually, one of my things I would have liked to do when I was young was be a comedian myself.
Yeah.
So I figured I could mix both and be a public speaker and be entertaining at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Which are my
So,
favorite. I love public speakers who have some personality and stuff
well,
like that.
yeah. You want a good laugh too, Yeah.
Right. No, but
And
it's just like, it's boring unless somebody throws some humor and personality into it.
yeah,
It just makes it all that much more interesting. I'm a junkie for public speakers. Like, I'll go see, if I see keynote speakers in Vegas and it's not even for my convention, I'll go listen to them.
yeah.
I really like that stuff. It's a lot of
Well,
fun.
I did a lot of corporate gigs as a light guy, and I've met some really cool public speakers.
Yeah.
That's what it was inspiring me.
Yeah.
But like I
Yeah.
said, when the AVL thing came along, I went, "Oh, you know what? I wouldn't mind doing that."
So did you
And
grow up on Tony Robbins? Because you
didn't
mentioned
grow
him
up on
earlier.
Tony Robbins. I discovered Tony Robbins late.
Yeah.
But then again, I think I read just about every book he read to become what he is now. Because
Yeah.
my mother had a library, but I actually inherited that library when she passed away. And I could recognize stuff from all the other people that I have had read books on.
Yeah.
Because what Tony did, actually, he just took all that knowledge and brought it into a package people could understand.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I started listening to him like 1981, 82. I've been a Tony Robbins guy forever. And lately he's lost me a bit. Like, he's become
yeah,
a little too polished salesman now.
yeah.
And plus, it's just repackaging of the same content that he used 40, 50 years ago,
Yeah.
So it's like, how
Yeah,
many times do I need to hear?
last time I looked at one of his presentations, I was like, "Oh, I'm looking at the public he's speaking to, and it's just not me."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think he's
They're all like
talking.
dancing around and jumping up and
Oh
down and
yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Which
there's
is, I mean, that's his thing now is,
well, it's
change
mass.
change your energy and change your outcome and all of that kind of stuff. But
Yeah,
it's just a little too yeah, it's a little silly for me now. Like,
Yeah.
and it's sad because I really like, he actually probably was one of the guys who made a difference in my life. Like, I was
Hmm.
listening to his cassette tapes when I was, 16, 17 years old, and really learning from him. Like,
Yeah.
really, like, picking up as much stuff as I possibly could that said, hey, you don't have to be a broke, dumb, fat idiot. You can actually make something of your life. And I'm like, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so yeah, that's interesting. Well, congratulations. I mean, the book thing is cool. Again, writing, publishing, putting books out there, putting your story out there, especially when it's so personal as building your own house for your family and stuff, is amazing,
Yeah.
especially when you know that you're not doing it to get rich. Like,
Oh, yeah, it's a simple story, and it's
yeah,
like, once again, I'm doing this because maybe I can help somebody out there. I got some letters from people like in Denmark, and
yeah,
you don't know where this stuff travels, right?
yeah,
And yeah, this lady who had like a revelation, yeah,
yeah,
that's one of those words that don't
yeah,
translate well.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, she said, "Oh, I always knew it was in the brain, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Now you, fine, okay." So I helped somebody. I'm very happy with that.
yeah.
There's
That's
nothing
cool.
special about my story. It's just I figured, well, maybe if a schmo like me was able to do something with himself, then maybe somebody else might get inspired by it.
Yeah.
That was the whole idea behind the story.
No, that's really super cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today to do this. It's been fun. It's been cool getting to know you. I didn't know you before, even though we both come from the same country, Canada.
Yeah.
I spend the summers now up, and I have a place in Canmore, just outside of Calgary in the mountains,
Uh-huh.
very close to Banff.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm leaving in 2 or 3 weeks to go up there for the summer. And it's not vacation. It's just a different set of scenery. I happen to love the mountains. I don't like the cold so much anymore, which is why I go more in the summer. But yeah, I miss a lot of things about Canada. There's other things I don't miss, but we won't go into that. But yeah, I appreciate you
Where are
taking
you
the
now?
time. I'm in South Florida. I live in
Okay. Okay.
Palm Beach, Florida,
Oh,
basically.
nice.
And I've been here I've been in South Florida since 1991 is when I moved down here. So
Oh, wow.
been here ever since. And I built my place up in Canada about 20 years ago and been going back and forth ever since. So I love it. It's sort of the perfect mix right now. It's just as you're getting older, every time I go, it's like, okay, did I get all my prescriptions done? Have I seen the
Yeah.
doctor? Am I worried about anything? So yeah, it gets harder as you get older, of course, but as long as you stay healthy, like you said,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
that much
Exactly.
easier. Well, say hello to Mr. Costers for me. I like that guy. He's a
Absolutely.
good man.
Yes, he is.
And when you kick your podcast back into gear, let me know if you want me to come on someday. We can have another talk in the opposite direction.
Absolutely. I would love that.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks a lot,
Okay.
Claude.
Well, you have a great non-vacation there, and
Yeah,
we'll touch base when you get back.
absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
All right. See
Well,
ya.
thanks a million for this opportunity. I really,
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
no problem at all. Thanks for coming.
Okay, take care.